We're back. It's Saturday morning at Washington International. There are certain riders, I think, depending on the show weekend of the year that we're faced, there's certain riders that we associate with certain venues. And, you get Marcus Aining at Aachen, you've got Ralph Joran Benson in Gothenburg, you get Keane O'Connor in Dublin. But when you come to Washington International, you want to see Katie Dinan, and more years than not, you get to see Katie Dinan, and that's going to be the case again in 2024. Katie, you have more starts here, or you will have more starts tonight. You'll go past BZ Mazin tonight in terms of 2014 on and at this World Cup class and top level class here at Washington. Tonight will make it 9. You're shared in terms of your round 1 clear rate. You're shared in terms of your most podiums. You are totally synonymous with Washington. And then, of course, last year, last to go in the jump off, you win it. It was emotional for us watching in Ireland, and I can only imagine what it was like for yourself and Brago at this time last year.
Well, I think that was the first time I've been grouped with those 3 other riders, so thank you for that. Um, Definitely a flattering bunch to be associated with a show like Washington so closely is a huge honor for me. It's an amazing competition that we have in the U.S. I think that probably one of the reasons why I have now tied with BZ the most starters and will so high up there in a number of starts is because Washington is really a show that we prioritize in our yearly calendar. I think that stems from me being an American rider and growing up in the US where these like our canonical indoor shows were really what you aimed for, whether that was in the pony hunters, whether that was in the equitation, junior jumpers, and then up at, going into the Grand Prix League, World Cup qualifiers, and like really focusing on our World Cup season. So I think it's something that I've always had on my calendar and really did my best to have my horses geared up for this our indoor league here, and Washington is the pinnacle of that. So it's, I think, a great show. It's had a few different renditions over the last few years, but it has a great group behind it, especially Vicky Lowell, who has put her heart into this show, and they've adapted to changing times and different needs from horses and riders in a really great way. I did my first show here in 2003 when it was back at the Verizon Center, and I won the small pony under saddle, which was like my biggest blue ribbon that time in my life. And it was cool that last year, 20 years later, to win the Grand Prix. So I've definitely had a lot of big moments in my career here.
What's it like, Katie? For those of us who don't get to experience the high of living it, we see it and you can kind of feel it as a fan. And even as a fan far removed in Ireland, waking up or staying up to watch Washington, for us, it's a 8:30 start. For you guys tonight, it'll be 1:30 in the morning for us. But we'll be up and we'll be watching Washington. Like last year, you're last to go. But only you really have the personal history and all of the personal emotion and feel that it takes to look back 20 years and see that kid with her first big blue ribbon and then bring it all the way to winning. Like, do you get to reflect on it after? Do you get to feel it all in that kind of euphoric rush? Is it somewhere in the middle? Like it's a special thing to do, and as you say, look, for it to be at Washington is great, but it's a special moment, I think, to come back and win it, having been there earlier.
I think that in this sport there is a lot of work and time, and really everything put in, not just from the riders, but as much or even more so from the teams behind them. And it's really like you have to relish the moments when everything comes together. And like, I don't want to say this is just why we do it, because I think there's a lot of reasons to do this other than, the big wins. But like times like that is really a celebration of all the work you've put in and your hopes and dreams and connecting with your horse at that level. And it, for me, was really just a euphoric moment. I think especially winning last year with my horse Brago, who was a horse that I had for over 5 years and had jumped so many classes with, and who had always been such an amazing partner for me. I felt like he really deserved it. And maybe this is projecting a bit, but I think that he was really proud of himself, and like that feeling for me, and that I could deliver that for him, that like still gives me goosebumps. So for sure, in the moment, it's a feeling that makes everything else worth it. And I think then afterwards, it's a balance of like having these fond memories that we keep, and also like always looking forward and not looking back.
Always looking forward. We were, and we are heavily invested in the horse that you're going to be riding tonight. Previously ridden by Shane Sweetenham, again a rider that you're going to face tonight, riding James Can Cruz, one of the top horses in the world. So you're going to have to beat. You're going to have to beat the best if you're going to win tonight. You know that already, and you've done it before. Shane previously rode Out of the Blue. You've had a great season. I mean, it's you're only together, I think, since I think your first big 150 came in March of this year.
Yeah.
But you've been to all the big you were in Aachen, Wellington, Ocala. You've had 155, 160 clears with Out of the Blue. Where are you feeling in terms of this evening in the journey? Is tonight? Look, every night is a going for it night to some degree, but also, how are you feeling with the progress, given it's still a new partnership?
So thank you for your kind words. I am so happy and grateful to have a horse like Out of the Blue SCF in our stable. We call her Bridie in the barn, which was the barn name she came with from Shane and Spy Coast Farm. She's an amazing mare. She was born and bred in the U.S. By Spy Coast and Lisa Laurie, and brought up really in the Spy Coast and Shane Sweetenham program. So a huge credit to them. And I think the world of Shane as a rider and horse person. So that's been a real honor to kind of continue her career. We have, I would say, are still in many ways, I hope at the beginning of our partnership. We had the opportunity to jump some very big events this year. She jumped the Rolex Grand Prix at the end of WEF, and the Rolex Grand Prix in Aachen, as well as the Nations Cup there. And those big rounds with her gave me a lot of confidence. But this is our first indoor show together. Washington is known for having a very tight arena with a lot of atmosphere. And so that in that way, it's a totally different set of questions. So I'm hoping for the best. And of course, we brought her here thinking we were prepared, but I'm also cognizant that I'm still very much in like a learning period of my relationship with her. And so I'm still learning every time I go in the ring with her. And to be learning and still being competitive, I think, is a tribute to her, and kind of keep going one step at a time, because I think she has tremendous potential. Last year with Brago was a horse I knew like as well as anything, and he knew the job. Like he could basically do it himself. We're like a step behind him learning how to read the course diagram, and then we would have been all set. But with Bridie, it's for sure we're still building our partnership. But she felt good in the first class here, and she always tries her 100%. So I always have a good feeling going into any class with her.
I don't know if it's a help or a hindrance, but you've done it as a rider now, with different horses, with Nuga, with Brago, and with a huge string over the last 20 years, as you say, since that big blue ribbon here. But we think you've got a really special horse here, rated in the top 100 of their age group. Big 9-year-old year last year. You've maintained a big 10-year-old year in a new partnership. Always going to be difficult, and then new questions. Like the, as you say, the indoor tonight coming all the time, and travel as well with Aachen. But in an exciting time for US jumping generally. You've got a World Games at Aachen. You've got LA, obviously, which will still be in this horse's career plan. You would think. I think you've got all the ingredients on both sides. So you've a You have a huge Irish fan club, I can assure you. Yeah, so we'll be looking tonight and
Thank you.
into 2025. So good luck with that.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I was gonna ask. You mentioned Vicky, and as you said, charismatic leader of Washington, and has poured her heart and soul into this event year after year, and continually finding new ways and new initiatives to continue to progress the show. One of the pieces that struck me over the last couple of days looking at the program was the partnership with Trigja Ladare, I think is as it's known in Sweden. I know some of my Swedish friends will be laughing at my pronunciation, but essentially, kind wins is the title of the campaign at Washington, and I know you've been a big part with a number of other committee members at Washington, and some of the junior committee at Washington. I know Henrik Ankarona of the Swedish team is on site this weekend, but in general, a campaign around inclusivity, around mental health, around the equestrian community being a supportive place for all riders. But putting yourself back to that girl who wins the blue ribbon 20 years ago here, as much for the current group, it feels important that, in an age of social media, in an age of maybe a more growing disconnect with the identity that so many equestrian people hold so dear, when you've got so much online pieces as well, a campaign like this feels really timely, resonates in Europe, in the US, and around the world. What and why was it important to you, or what was the important pieces that resonated with you to be able to throw your support behind this?
Sure. So I was really honored to be asked to be an ambassador for Kind Winds, this new initiative that Washington is adopting this year with their Swedish partners. I think it's incredibly important, as you say, at all ages and stages of one's riding career. I think I know the Washington Junior Committee here, which has always been a very involved group, has really rallied behind this. And I think, I mentioned that I was my first time at Washington 20 years ago. And I think being a teenager is hard enough for anybody. And then you add this element of being in a competitive sport, especially in the US, where we're judged more than in Europe. There's like the hunters and equitation element, which have a subjective element as well. It's not just based on scores, but you're competing with, among and with and against your friends. And then I was mostly spared this just because of my age, but now with the increasing use of social media, which has had so many studies about social media being negative to one's mental health, and this kind of always comparing yourself to others, and not just to others, but a very curated form of others' lives. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that is a recipe for a lot of mental health struggle, and that bullying now is often in more subtle ways that might not be as obvious to outsiders, but nonetheless still detrimental to victims of that bullying. And I think a lot of ways that we can help this come from, one, great role models, not just in being, hopefully trying to be a good person and putting positivity out there, but role models saying that, like, this is not the behavior we stand for. Also, awareness, both among um, kids, teenagers, and adults that have like parents and trainers and coaches and all of that, being more aware that, um, no one is going to be like exempt from this. Like, there's going to be, like, you might think, oh, this doesn't affect our bar and this doesn't affect our stable, but most likely there are elements of this everywhere. And I think just being aware and realizing that this is something that's going on is really important. We had a panel yesterday at the show with the Swedish contingent and some of the American group. And I think that one thing I said there was how important it was to remember, like, for these young riders, like, why they started riding. And usually it was out of a love for the horse and a love for the sport, and less about beating this person or winning this or winning that. And to really, like, not lose sight of that. And that also,
Yeah.
some of my best friends are people that I grew up riding with, and many of them don't even ride anymore. but this like shared love that we have for horses, the shared love we have for being at the barn, for understanding what the sport is, which is not something that, maybe most of the population does understand. So it's a really special thing to be able to share that with people. That makes both the good and the bad moments better. Like, if you have a bad moment in the sport, to feel all alone isn't a great feeling. And if you have a great moment and you have a big win, or a big goal that you've met, it feels much better if you have a team behind you. And so I think that, maintaining those connections and realizing that how important it is to keep close friends in this sport, and that makes kind of everything better. But for sure, I think it's not going to,
Yeah.
it's definitely an important initiative. And I think it's great that Washington is standing behind this. And I hope its presence grows in the US.
You touched on a couple of really interesting pieces. I mean, as an EquiRatings, we're studying win chances and predictive analysis around the sport every day, all day, all night. And one of the messages that I hope we're able to try to get out there when we're talking about win chances, I mentioned Shane Sweetenham having a big chance this evening. One of the pieces on that is, even as one of the top rated 11-year-old horses in the world, James Can Cruz, one of the top rated horses in the world, any age group, he'd be in the top 5 currently. He's still I think he's a 19% win chance tonight, which means 81% chance of him losing. And Henrik von Eckermann was pretty similar, even going, with King Edward going to Paris. And it's a sport in which you lose, and the best people lose more and more than they win. It's just not, it's not the same as running, where the best person, or swimming potentially, where the best person can run or swim a certain time and then you can replicate it. There's such a huge degree of chance within the sport that actually the togetherness that's necessary because of the constant disappointment, if you allow it in, is, I think, more important than ever. And for us, okay, from my point of view, it comes from an understanding of data to some degree, which is actually understanding win chances and understanding that how disappointing the sport can be if because of how much, how infrequent wins are, how rare it is to win. I mean, yourself and Brago had probably five years together, and I know you had the Traverse City win. I think you did pretty good 2023 with Brago, wasn't it? Where was you had the Traverse City win and a couple more, but to get that 5-star win is rare, and I think that's actually the same for all of the levels and all of the kids. And I have 2 kids now myself, and it's been a real eye opener for me watching them going off into little groups and seeing them going playing football for the first time, or going to whatever dance class for the first time. And when you close the door behind and you see them going off with this little group of guys and girls, and you're hoping, you're somewhere on the outside looking in, hoping that okay, fit in, okay, and hopefully they'll find a friend. Yeah, you're just hoping that okay, they're able to find some connection with someone, and also just that someone minds them. It's funny, I think for me, it definitely had opened it up, seeing it through my own kids, that that concept of kindness maybe resonated with me more when I read it in the program, being around those 2 and just thinking, the value of having someone kind in your life and someone kind around you, and a couple of people just being there to pick you up in a sport, or to celebrate the wins with, as you say. But it really resonated with me. Thank you for being an ambassador on a Saturday morning of a World Cup show at Washington. I know a lot of people will want your time, and you'll need to get your head in the game, so I'm not going to keep you any longer. But thank you for taking the time to speak to me, and good luck this evening. And well done, and thanks again for being part of the Kind
Thank you
Wins
so much.
campaign.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think it means a lot to us all.
Thank you very much.